Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet. It's time to grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back and relax while we chat about what is happening up in the sky above us for the week ahead. Welcome to February, everybody, and we are looking ahead at a day, a week that has quite a bit of nervous energy, anxious energy, energy of surprises, etc. So hopefully we can, by talking about all of this, make it so that it is a fabulous week ahead. Maybe some awakening, some revelation, and of course, yesterday's full moon already puts us in that frame of mind, right? It already takes it and moves us into the potential for something being awakened, something being released, something coming into a completion mode. And that's always a good thing, right? After the full moon, to be able to, with circumspection, look backward a little bit and see what it is that is perhaps coming into a completion for you, and or something that's been revealed, right? The full moon shines a very giant, bright spotlight on everything that is going on in your life. And that moon, of course, was in the sign of Leo while the sun was in the sign of Aquarius. So we have an axis across the heart and the mind, sort of like the interface between the two, as in Aquarius sun is a very mind-oriented kind of sign. It's an air sign, so it has to do with information and how we communicate with one another, but also the waves of influence that are out there. When you look at the sign or the symbol for the sign of Aquarius, you see the wavy lines. So we get this idea there's a frequency of mind that is running through things. And then on the opposite side, the moon was in the sign of Leo. It still is today. And Leo is a sign of the heart. And so we have mind and heart being encompassed and embraced in that full moon yesterday. So wherever it is that wherever it was in your own chart is where there is this relative opening for heart and mind. And sometimes that makes it almost like this revelation moment where you might be tempted to beat yourself up or to do something drastic. Hopefully everybody avoided doing that and instead just looked more closely, at, what is it that I really wanted or desired? And how is it that I want to get there? So that full moon, very powerful. We're still in the full moon window. So it could be that as the moon moves through Leo and touches on any planets that you have in Leo, it could be bringing some things to a close. And as the sun finishes, it's not finished yet, but as he moves continually through Aquarius, whatever house Aquarius is in is also where there could be some more revelation energy. And to me, it's kind of exciting, right? Every month we get this opportunity to see things with fresh new eyes. Now, I know I've said this before, but it's worth reminding everybody that the moon phases, every moon phase has sort of this theme that goes through it. And the full moon phase theme is really about revelation or about that. What is it that I need to complete or finish in order to take my next steps? So frequently, we think of the new moon as the new beginning. And in a way, it really is, but it's a new beginning that takes place in the dark, right? It's the dark of the moon, and we're just planting the seed then of an intention that we want to see through in the time ahead of us, whether that's the next month or week or 2 months, however long, right? When we get to the full moon, we have the full light of the moon. So we often have that moment where we see, I planted the seed for XYZ, whatever that was, and now I need to maybe make some course corrections in order to get there. Or maybe there's some other component to it that I missed during the dark of the moon that I need to pick up. What's the thread that I need to pick up now with the full moon? And I always find it so interesting to see, like, the full moon is always the very dramatic time of the month, right? If people are going to go off the rails, it's often at the full moon. And that's because so much becomes available to us, so much information, so much emotion, so much of the moment is captured in the light of that full moon, where at the new moon, it's all sort of the blank slate. So the full moon, whether or not, you have had an emotional reaction to what's been going on in your life or not, should have brought something to the surface for you, right? To take a look at. And as well, then now as we move through the waning phase of the moon cycle, right? Waning meaning now the moon is going to start to get lighter, darker, I mean, get darker and darker every day until we get to the next new moon. You have the chance to really put things into perspective. And, even it's not that you can't change course, because I would say between now and the time we get to the next quarter moon, which will be this time next week, this next Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, it will be a great time for you to evaluate, well, what things do I need to change in terms of my mind and my thinking, or in my life, in order to really get to where I wanted to go with the new moon back 2 weeks ago. I hope that makes sense for everybody, because I know we always think of the new moon as the new beginning, but the full moon also offers up a new beginning. It's just not one that comes up out of the dark like it does in the new moon. It's one who has the light bulb turned on, where we can really see what it is that needs to change, or what new direction we need to move in, or what needs to be tweaked in order for us to take that next step. Okay. So good morning to everybody who is showing up here this morning. I saw my husband, Terry, out there. Good morning, Terry. Jackie, oh my Lord. J-Lo, in other words, good morning to you. Happy Monday. Joan Durchie and Nargis, good morning to you. And Teddy, good morning. Hug yourself. You deserve it. I love that. Christine Buckingham, good morning to you. Amanda Jake, joining us from somewhere in England. Happy to have you with us this morning. Christine says that's the origin of the word term lunatic. Indeed. Peggy, good to have you with us this morning. And for the rest of you out there who I don't see, it's good to have you joining us. So I want to start this morning's broadcast going backwards to Friday, because we did not get to finish up the thought of the February emotional realm that we were talking about through the perspective of human design. So we made it through, I think it was the second week of February. So now we're going to enter into the third week of February, and literally February 19th through 23rd. And what I'm doing is just giving you guys an overview of the emotional energies for the month of February. Certainly we will go deeper into each of those weeks as they dawn upon us, but I wanted to give you this idea, this overview of that. February is really a month where we are learning about emotions, or dealing with emotional energy in a much more profound way. And that's because all of the gates in your human design that are being transited by the sun and the earth, sun, not earth necessarily, but the sun, are sitting on the solar plexus, which is the center for emotional energy and creative energy. So this particular time of every year is a very creative moment. The solar plexus very, very much taking us into the creative juices, right? The creative energy as we are approaching the astrological new year, which will be next month at the spring equinox. So I'm going to show you, I didn't bring it up. Hold on. Let me bring up the image of the, where would I have put that? Under downloads. Here we go. This is the image of the human design chart for February. And then I also have some other information on here. So I'll be back and forth with this chart. But I want to call your attention to this lower right quadrant of the chart, where there are a lot of different gates that are defined on this particular chart. So we know going into next week, we start with the gate 49, and that's the gate of revolution, the gate of rebellion, where a lot of changes start to take place. And then that gives way into the next gate, which was the gate 30 over here at the bottom right corner. That is called the gate of passion. And it has a lot of creative energy to it that is based on heart, what you love, what you want to create, what's really exciting, what drives your passion, because the energy of the gate of desire here is really about, well, what do I want to create? What do I love? What could I do all day? And we talked about that one on Friday. Now, after that, we go to the week of February 19th to the 23rd. And here's one of my favorite gates. It's the dragonfly that I have on my tattoo, that the gate 55. And it's right here in the middle of the solar plexus heading down to the root center. And the gate 55, it's called the gate of faith in quantum human design. In traditional human design, I believe it was called the gate of abundance. And literally, it is the only gate in human design that is really showing us abundance. And it's not on the solar, it's not on the sacral center, which we think of as the center of doing and being. Instead, it comes on the emotional solar plexus. So it comes from our alignment to feeling energy, to emotional energy. And that's a huge thing for us to recognize. So the gate 55 is really this deep emotional place, and emotion that really helps us to align ourselves with what it is that we desire. So thinking of it coming out of the week of desire, right, where the sun had been in the gate 30, now it moves to the 55, and now we have to have the faith that we deserve to have our desires come true, the faith that our desires, our dreams will come true, right? And really all we need to have is the faith that this will happen, right? Faith. Now, the emotional energy component of all of this is about how we align to the different emotions that are triggered by our desires earlier from the gate 30 and now put to work in the gate 55 abundance. And so emotional energy here really becomes this clarion call for us to keep aligning ourselves with what feels good, what feels right, what feels true, and what feels correct, what makes you happy. And your true calling comes when you are emotionally aligned and the things that you want to manifest in your life happen, not just because you've thought about them or it's in your head that this is what you want. It comes because you're able to keep emotionally aligning with the feelings that will attract what it is that you want, right? It's not just about keeping your mind on it. And, when we think about the solar plexus, as I said last week, has way more nerve endings in it. And the kind of cells that we think of in the brain that are creative are like multiplied by a factor of 2 or 3, I think, in the gut. And that means the gut has intelligence. The solar plexus has intelligence, but that intelligence is based on emotion. All right. So emotional energy, keeping aligned with the emotion that will get you where you want to go. Now, in the gene keys, I think that the 55 is the most extraordinary of the gene keys. In the shadow energy, the gate 55 is victimization. And that is a big shadow energy on this planet. It is highly activated on the planet at the moment, and it keeps getting activated. It is literally a part of your DNA, because if we take it to the gene keys level, we are talking your DNA. So in our very fabric of our DNA lie the seeds of victimization, which is related to fear. It is all about fear. Fear that I am not enough, that I don't have enough, that I won't attract enough, that I don't get what I want. The fear that I have this dream and it's never going to come true. So all of that shadow energy becomes victimization, where you let yourself down, where the way that you see the world and the things that are happening around you is through the victim's lens. Now, we can move out of victimization by moving into the gift energy of this particular gene key, which is freedom. And this is the only gene key in the whole of the 64 gene keys that has freedom as its gift and as its siddhi, the highest expression. It's freedom and freedom, baby. So gate 55 really teaches us that emotional freedom doesn't come from control. It comes from trusting life itself. It comes from trusting your feelings, trusting that you have this intrinsic emotional connection to the things that you desire. And all you must do is keep aligning with that desire or with that emotion. And during that same week, the Earth will be in the gate 59, which I didn't highlight here, but it's on the sacral center, and the gate 59 moves out toward the emotional solar plexus. So it's on the right side of the second center up from the bottom. And that gate is called the gate of sustainability. It is also called the gate of intimacy, sometimes not so much in intimacy, but sexuality. But this is the emotional truth that wants connection. So the Earth grounds us in what it is that connects us. And it can only connect here, or it connects with what is sustainable, right? It is a sustainability factor here. So the teaching in this particular week, February 19th through 23rd, is that where faith replaces certainty, right? Our minds, our beingness, we want certainty. We want to know for certain that this will happen, that if I dream it, it will happen. But the gate 55 and then the 59 would suggest that you have to have a sustainable emotional connection to that desire, to that want, to that dream, to that vision, and have faith that you will be continually guided toward the steps that take you where you want to go. And you don't necessarily know the outcome, right? The outcome is not your necessarily your destination, but it's what's really true for you right now in this moment. And then in that next moment, another step may appear for you to move through to get to where you want to go. So that week is very interesting in terms of abundance and desire and what it is that you want, and having the faith that you'll have the right feeling in the right time to take the next steps that you need to get to where you want. Okay. And I'll check back here in a minute to see if anybody has questions. Let's move on to the last week of February. In fact, February 24th through March 1st. Oh, I'm looking at January. I didn't turn my calendar yet. So that will be the sun in the gate 37, also an emotional gate. And the gate 37 is called the gate of peace, and it will be connected to the gate 40 on the will center. And this may sound very familiar to you because we just did quite a lot of talking about the 3740, because that's where the north and the south node are. So this last week of February, we have a mirror image occurring where the sun and the earth are in the same gates as the north and the south nodes. So it has a very destiny feeling to it, right? Destiny. Now, this is an integration phase, perhaps, of all of the emotional energy for the month of February. And in the gate 37, or the gene key 37, we have the shadow of weakness, where the gift becomes equality and the highest expression is tenderness. This really is an energy that links us through community, through family, through tribe. It is where we belong, where we do well with others, right? Where that family connection is really powerful. And it can be family blood origin, but it can also be family, choice family, chosen family. And after the emotional wave crests and breaks, the gate 37 restores harmony, right? The emotional wave of the 37 is much smaller than the waves of the 55 and the waves of the 30. And even the 49 in some respects has a fairly high point and low point, where the 37 is more undulating. It's closer to neutral It can be closer to neutral. And this is where we get mutual support from the people around us, where we find the people that support our dreams, where the right opportunities find us to support our dreams, where there's emotional fairness and belonging and community built on consent, not necessarily obligation, right? It's because we want to be together and not because we have to be together. And then with the Earth and the South Node being in a conjunction at the gate 40, which is called restoration in quantum human design, we see that rest is also necessary, where we have to take the pause, where we have to discover that rest is actually a sacred part of what we do and who we are living on this planet. It's that withdrawing energy is medicine, right? It becomes medicine to be able to come back and rest. And we also have another energy with the Earth here that restores reciprocity, where there's this equal give and take that is potential. But for all of us, since the nodes are here, we may see where that's upside down, right? We might see where we are giving, and it's way out of order to the amount that we receive. And of course, the opposite can be true, where we are receiving but not giving. So we have this opportunity to restore that balance, that harmony, so that we are living in peace. Now, this is also where emotional wisdom becomes livable, where we take what we have been learning all month long, all the month of February, we're learning about these emotional energies, and where they become livable, where we live in the wisdom of the solar plexus energy. And yes, the fact that this aligns with the nodes this last week especially makes this a karmic reset, right? There's definitely that tone as well to the end of February, where we can release the old emotional contracts and also choose peace over endurance, right? Where we don't have to stick with the same thing ad nauseum just because it's always been, right? We can really move through those changes because they feel good to us, right? This is feeling good energy. This is feeling right energy. So February, if we just look in the main, right, we're going to step back now and look at the bigger month of February. It takes us from the story, which is where we are this week, as we start with the sun in the gate 13, which is the gate of the narrative, right, the story of humanity, but also, you know, your personal story and how you're telling the story of what it is that has happened in your life and what's possible for you. And we move that story into feeling, and we can see that our feelings really become creative energy. And so we move from the reactionary energies into the more emotionally wise energies, where we actually choose how to respond rather than being just reactive. And that takes us from intensity into peace, right? And it teaches us that true leadership and courage and humanity begins with honoring our emotional wave. I mean, we could talk for hours about the solar plexus because it is such a powerful center, and only gaining in power and representation as we move forward into 2027's energy of the mutation that occurs in the solar plexus, right? Where we truly have to begin learning emotional wisdom and let go of emotional reactivity. Okay. All right. Questions, people. I guess, you know, my question for most of you, or the question I would get mostly from you, is about how does it show up differently for people who have an open emotional center versus people who have that center defined already. Now, if you have an emotional center that is defined, you are already broadcasting emotion. So this becomes a real call for you to pay attention to what it is you're broadcasting, because others, those of you with the open emotional center, and if it's open, it's white, you might have some hanging gates off of that emotional center. You are taking in the emotion that the broadcasters are broadcasting and taking it in and amplifying it potentially and rebroadcasting it, meaning that you are being conditioned by the emotional field to feel things that maybe aren't even true, where indeed it's just meant for you to understand the energy that is around you, right? The energy that is around you. So open versus defined. Defined your broadcasting emotion, and now you'll need to really tap in and make sure that what you're broadcasting is what it is that you really mean to be broadcasting. And if you are open, you're taking in, amplifying, rebroadcasting. So you want to make sure that it's truly your emotional energy and not someone else's. And truly, if you have an open emotional center, the best way for you to use that center is to really remove yourself from people for a bit. Like if you just need to leave the room so that you can, let all of that emotional energy shed from you so that you can gain some more clarity. Or just remind yourself, okay, this is what the room is feeling perhaps, or this is what, these other people around me are feeling. It's not mine. I do not have to be reactive to that energy. I can learn to respond or not, right? You don't have to respond just because that energy shows up. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Good morning, Asa. Good morning, Tamra. Jacqueline says, go figure why I was feeling wanky, waking up oddly. It was an odd night. I think it was an odd night. And Christine Buckingham, Leo at 59, Uranus, mind side 59, the body side. So, there's a lot of energy then for you at this point in time, or at that point in time. So February 19th to the 24th, where, your gate 59 is going to be triggered by the earth as well as the planets that sit there already. So I guess issues around sustainability, around connection in relationships, because the 59 is seeking intimacy or bonding, right? And how does that play out in your world, Christine? Good morning, Tom. Good to have you with us. And let's see what else. Any difference for open solar plexus? Yes, so I just answered that question for you, Christine. I hope if you have any further questions, let me know. So okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Open identity people feel others' emotions? No, open solar plexus does. What an open identity center does is kind of try on the identity of the people around them, right? Believing themselves to be something that perhaps they're not, right? Or an open identity is very wise about people, very wise about geographic location. What is a place that feels good, that supports you or is sustainable for you? The solar plexus is about emotion. The identity center is about who you identify as, right? So I hope that helps. The open identity people, if you have an open identity center and an open emotional center, for sure that's true. And that means that openness, just those two centers alone, can really, be difficult if you don't understand what's going on, right? It's hard for you to feel love. It's hard for you to feel like what direction you're going in. And certain people that you might be around, where you feel like you belong or that you feel like you have direction, may not be the right people for you, right? So it can be very tricky to have an open identity center and an open emotional center. And Karen's Corner, wow, I felt that both ways. There's a lot of feeling energy. So, for this month, for sure, and likely even into March, there are going to be plenty of opportunities for us to really learn about our emotions, to really, pay attention to what you're feeling and why. Don't hesitate to ask, whose feeling is this? Even if you do have a defined emotional center, maybe through other centers in your body you're taking in that are open, you're taking in some energies, and we've always got to ask, is this ours, right? Is this mine? Is this the right direction for me? Is this the right time for me to take action on this? And always asking those questions, right? And it also depends on your type and strategy, but also your authority in your human design, right? If let's say you're a projector and you have an open identity center and an open emotional center, and you already, we know you would have an open sacral center, you may be very tempted to do what everybody else is doing and tap into that without wading through what your authority is, which might be splenic, right? Your intuition, and connecting that with the waiting for an invitation to engage in something in your life. Reminding you that you are a guide, a leader, an orchestrator, not down in the trenches doing all the hard work. Unless, of course, you've been invited to do that and it felt good for you to do that, or felt right, or your intuition, gut instinct said yes, right? So type, strategy, authority also play into how it is that you are going to deal with this emotional energy. So the whole thing about human design and astrology is about knowing yourself, right? Knowing who you are, knowing how you react to different transits, what your chart looks like, that what's being triggered in your chart, right? So, and that's hopefully what I'm helping you guys unlock every day when we do these talks, is you have your charts with you so you can look and see what your human design looks like, what your gene keys look like, what your astrology looks like. So you understand, oh, Leo is on my second house. I'm dealing with issues around self-worth, value, perhaps finances and earning power. And if you have a solar plexus that's open, now whose feelings am I feeling, right? What are the emotional energies that I am going to be impacted by on a daily basis for the month of February and into March, right? And you wouldn't know that if you didn't know your human design. Tamara, my sleep center is defined and throat. Sleep center. Which one are you thinking is sleep center? Defined, all others open, and yes, have had some hard lessons. You know, lessons are all about it. Karen is a mental projector, so all of her centers except the head and ajna likely are open. So you are, you know, all you really have is your mind and how your mind is moving through all of these different energies, right? These different emotional energies. And guess what? You can't rationalize emotion. It just doesn't work. So you can't use your mind, which is what your typical way of being would be. It's what your definition would say. You're not going to be able to use that definition to understand your feelings, right? You'll have to go into the emotional center and realign and help yourself respond correctly. The spleen center. Ah, yes. That's funny because autocorrect does the weirdest things sometimes, Tamara. So yes, the spleen center is a center where you might be stuck in old patterns, you know, where you can't let go, where you have intuition or gut instinct, but maybe that you fail to pay attention when it speaks because it speaks softly and it speaks once. It doesn't keep coming back and nagging at you. So and it is a way of knowing that is not emotional, right? It is a little more standoffish than that, right? It's purely gut instinct, right? We call it gut instinct, but maybe it's instinctual awareness or intuitional awareness that's much more appropriate. So you don't get gut and solar plexus mixed in there. Well, I hope that makes sense. All right. So what else is happening this week? Well, this week, tomorrow, Uranus, the planet of awakening, of liberation, of surprises, goes direct, meaning it moves out of its retrograde phase and back into forward motion. So I want to reintroduce Uranus to you for a minute and talk about it mythically and practically, because there's a level of chaos that occurs when Uranus changes direction. So back on September 1st, go back in time to the fall of 2025, or it was late summer of 2025 when Uranus turned into retrograde motion. Now, Uranus isn't chaos for chaos's sake, although sometimes it kind of feels that way. But Uranus is the awakener. So you might say something like Uranus is the planet of disruption, perhaps, right? That would work. But disruption in service of liberation. So he's not disruptive just to cause havoc or chaos. There's a purpose. There's a method to his madness. There's a method to the madness of Uranus. It breaks what's stagnant and then exposes what's fake or artificial. and then shocks us awake when we've been sleepwalking through some habit or some comfort zone that we've gotten stuck in. And that happens collectively, but also you get individually awakened at times with Uranus as well. Now, Uranus is in the sign of Taurus now, right? He retrograded backward out of Gemini, so he actually turned retrograde, turned retrograde in Gemini, moved backward into Taurus, and now is in Taurus, turning forward. And in Taurus specifically, it rules things like our values, right? Value, worth, and what we value. So our values as a collective, our values as a society, as a nation, as a collective, right? It also rules money and resources here, Taurus itself, and food and the land and the body in some respects. The sturdiness, the survival of the body is also part of what is ruled in Taurus. And then safety and stability and what we rely on to feel secure. So you take the planet Uranus, who likes to disrupt and create, some big changes in the name of liberation, and you put them in a sign like Taurus, and what we have is awakening through instability in the material world, right? That's a theme, right? That is the theme. Now, Uranus turned retrograde, as I said, September 1st, and retrograde Uranus tends to turn all of that awakening and liberation energy inward. It goes internal, it goes subterranean. So there are things that are working on the inside of each of us, but the inside of the collective that are moving us toward a new liberation. And it can stir up anxiety and anticipation and unease without any visible release of that energy. Right? That's what this retrograde Uranus has been bringing. But it can also bring quiet realizations to each of us instead of visible events. And it might feel like something isn't right, something's off, but I can't name it yet, right? So when Uranus goes retrograde, the revolution doesn't stop necessarily. The revolutionary energy doesn't stop. It just kind of goes underground. And it becomes something like suppressed unrest. It could become quiet policy shifts in the social world, the cultural world, the political world. It can be background destabilization, something happening behind the scene that's being untied and untethered. Truth that's being withheld, delayed, or minimized. Think Epstein files, right? Epstein files. And that's just one news cycle kind of thing that was going on during that whole period of time. Now, we can also look at the patterns of the things that sort of went underground in the news cycle at that time. And then that would give us this sort of notice on what it is that is going to be maybe blasting back into our awareness over the next several months. Now, if you think back to, late summer and early fall, we had this economic instability that was kind of labeled or reframed maybe as temporary, right? Temporary inflation, taking steps to lower prices, etc. Supply chain or food issues, right? Or, supply issues, meaning like how do we get goods from one place to another? Maybe we had land or housing or medical insurance issues, resource issues that were quietly worsening, right? Getting worse or about to get worse. Maybe personal realizations that you sat with, but didn't really take action on. Maybe it wasn't the right time to take the next step. So that energy of Uranus retrograde kind of kept us sort of safe, grounded, observational, rather than predictive, right? There was nothing that we needed to act on, nothing that really showed us what our next steps should be, right? Or would be. Now, that means stories during this period of time that Uranus was retrograde surface briefly and then disappear. Like they bring up, they go away. They come up, they go away. And issues could be by the media or by governments or by groups and communities, might be reframed as resolved or temporary or under control. There may be delayed disclosures, something we've been anticipating being disclosed that doesn't get disclosed at all or doesn't get disclosed fully, or we have the feeling that there's way more under the surface than what we got information from. There can be this quiet normalization of instability where we start to kind of get used to the chaos. And individual voices go silent while the pressure is building during a retrograde Uranus. So the energy doesn't stop, right? The revolutionary energy, the awakening energy, the liberating energy doesn't stop. It just kind of compresses into pressure. Now, if we take a look at some of the issues that likely went underground during this period of time, maybe financial and economic instability kind of quietened down for a bit, right? Maybe food, agricultural land issues quieted down for a bit. But as Uranus turns direct tomorrow, consequences of those things become visible. The reactionary energies, and I'm not all for reaction, but that's kind of how this world works right now until we really get that emotional solar plexus down. Reactionary energy begins to happen. Shortages or price shifts begin to really feel like suddenly we are having to deal with the real world economic impact of higher prices, of tariffs, of price increases, of the percentage rate the financial markets bear, all of that. Policies affecting land and food suddenly draw attention again. But there's also vulnerabilities in our technology and in our infrastructure that get exposed during the shift from retrograde to direct. And, Uranus rules technology, and Taurus rules the physical systems that the technology supports or is sustained by. So the retrograde pattern could have brought us early warnings about tech crashes, about bubbles bursting and things like that. And then we heard nothing. And then maybe contained outages, maybe minimized cyber or infrastructure issues. And then direct motion will bring those visible breakdowns, will bring sudden systemic failures in some way. Public acknowledgement of the risks that were previously dismissed, ignored, not seen, right? So then, as an individual, perhaps that retrograde period has been a time of individual voices being sidelined. And yet now, this is suddenly going to be out in the open again, where individual voices rise. And you can almost see over the last few days how more voices are, becoming loud, especially as it relates in this country. I don't know about other countries, but in this country about immigration, ICE in particular, and the abuses of power that have been going on. So I would expect that while during the retrograde, some of those voices were squelched, during the next phase, the direct motion, voices return unexpectedly. Not even maybe unexpectedly, but in a loud way, in a loud manner. Maybe stories reemerge, but through new messengers, right? I've been thinking for a long time, we need new messengers out there. We need people to step up and be as loud as the ugly voices are, but being related to love and peace, and how do we work together instead of work in a polarized world. Maybe creative solutions to old problems, right? To the problems that we've had suddenly gain traction. And maybe individuals speak out without any kind of institutional backing, right? Somebody stands up and says, enough is enough, right? You have to do something, right? We have to do something. So Uranus stationing direct kind of looks like a bursting out of some energies, right? And the stories don't always come back out as updates. Sometimes it can feel like this is a new problem, but also with a new solution. And there can be sudden crises. There can be unexpected consequences to things that have been going on. no one saw this coming moment, right? The no one saw this going to be what happened. And that's the Uranian signature, right? When he changes direction, it's a signature in general, but when he changes direction, it becomes much more profound. So this is important for us as we move through what will be a very emotionally driven month, right? Uranus rules the nervous system in the body, right? So the shocks that might come from new awarenesses or from sudden liberations, sudden changes, and how that impacts our nervous systems. Uranus being in Taurus, so it might be how we are safe and how our survival energies are triggered. And because this is a solar plexus month, how our emotional processing proceeds through this particular time. And then what I haven't really talked about yet is the gate that Uranus turning direct is in your human design. So let me go back to my diagram here. And what you see is that the gate 8, where Uranus will be until April, is at the gate of contribution. So this has a very personal feel to it because this particular gate is all about what we contribute to what our voice is contributing to the world. It's in the throat center, right? And the throat center is communication. It is the creative energy expressed out in the world, the manifested creation coming from the solar plexus initially, right? And then being shown live through the voice. And it's not really collective messaging here either. It's not consensus thinking here. It's really more personal than that. So Uranus is taking a very personal view here in what is it that is your authentic self-expression? What's the true you, and how would you put voice to that? It offers you an opportunity to share your uniqueness with the world, right? And how you contribute to the world by being your true authentic self, not by trying to fit in with what everybody else is doing or who you interpret that you need to be based on who everybody else is. This is influence, your personal influence through resonance, not persuasion, right? This isn't really you having to be anything but your true self. Gate 8, Uranus is not here to convince. It's here to model. So this is kind of, you modeling to the world who you are because you've gained an authentic view and you are not willing anymore to sacrifice that. So now, if we put Uranus in this gate, what we see is disruption of the norm in your own personal life, what your normal routines are, an awakening of you as an individual, and breaking away from conformity and liberating your expression, liberating your voice, right? Liberating your creative energy. So this isn't necessarily subtle. It's been a while that Uranus has been in this gate. And maybe it has to shock us out of just the performative way that you belong in your family or in your world, in your city, in your community, and, shocking you back into your authentic contribution. And the transit doesn't ask you to say, how can I be accepted, or how can I be relevant, or how can I keep the peace? That's not the question. It is, am I contributing truthfully? Am I expressing what's real for me, even if it's unpopular? Therein lies another indication, right? Some things, you've just got to stand up for. And are you dimming your light to feel safe, to feel accepted? If so, Uranus upsets that, right? It takes that out of the equation here in the gate 8. So internally, while Uranus was retrograde in gate 8, you might have been questioning your voice, questioning who you are. You might have been pulling back from sharing of yourself. You might have been editing yourself. I find myself editing myself frequently in the morning here because of the political things going on in the world. Feeling unsure about how you fit in, how your voice fits in, how your creations fit in. Maybe individually feeling discouraged because you're complying rather than being authentic. And maybe you have felt this quiet pressure to stay in line, right? That's Uranus retrograde. Now, that will change as of tomorrow when Uranus turns direct. Your suppressed voice reemerges. Your originality pushes forward, pushes outward into the world. People will start speaking without waiting for permission, and it may sometimes come out contradictory. It may come to what their normal voice is. Contribution becomes visible again. This isn't everyone shouting at once either. This isn't everybody, the cacophony. It's distinct voices standing apart. So you're really calling out your individuality and daring to live your truth in your way, right? So Uranus turning direct in the gate 8 reminds us that contribution doesn't come from just agreeing to be what you want, what other people want you to be. It comes from your being authentic and living your authenticity. And you can expect maybe some unexpected messengers coming into your life, some unconventional leaders stepping up to the plate, saying new things, a new perhaps conversation emerging out of the field of voices that have been out there. Maybe individuals breaking rank, right? The rank and file not supported anymore as Uranus changes direction. Truth told sideways, perhaps coming from a different angle, creatively, symbolically. I would expect even in our dreams at night, becoming way more symbolic, maybe more volatile, maybe more shocking, because this is emotional energy that is rising eventually, that is unlocking something authentic that's been locked up within you. And also timing matters here because, these things aren't going to happen all at once, but they kind of happen over time. So the gate 8 shadow, if we look at the gene key, is mediocrity. Where are you just playing to what everybody else thinks and wants and does? The gift is style. And in the Siddhi, the highest expression, it's exquisiteness. Try that word on for size. Exquisite expression of who you are. Exquisite expression of your gifts, of your talents, of your creativity. So Uranus is disrupting mediocrity. No more is it just that medium road. And he's not attacking it necessarily. He's freeing it out of you, freeing up your voice, freeing up your creative energy. And it leaves behind the bland, and it is exploring the extraordinary, the exquisite. It's rejecting the copy-paste identities, right? No more, no more. Honoring your unique frequency and contributing through your presence, through your creativity, and through your integrity, being true to yourself. And I think, where you've been holding yourself back in some ways, this is, and you maybe were doing it because it didn't feel safe, or it didn't feel popular, or didn't feel like you would be approved. Now, what would it look like to contribute authentically simply by being unmistakably yourself? Just being you, right? This is what this gate 8 will bring us all to during this period of time. Fantastic, right? All right. Now, lastly, for this week, before we get to Friday, we have Mercury in Aquarius squaring Uranus, newly direct in Taurus, and that will happen on Thursday. So this sets the stage, right? That whole Uranus conversation that we just had sets the stage for this Mercury moving into the square with Uranus, because Mercury is the lower mind, Uranus the higher mind. And I don't mean that as a hierarchy. I just mean Mercury rules the mind and data and all of the communication and in the thinking, the logic, where Uranus sees things from the higher perspective and releases us from the constraints of the lower mind. So as Uranus turns direct, Mercury immediately picks a fight with it. Mercury comes in and says, put up your dukes, right? Let's go logic against higher thinking. Squares actually aren't bad, right? They're not necessarily fighting energy, but they are activation points. And the activation here creates a friction that forces us to become aware of something. And maybe this will be about our awareness of mind versus body, of idea versus reality, speed versus stability, right? Because we're squaring is Taurus energy against Aquarian energy, because Mercury's still in Aquarius that day. And both of those signs are fixed signs, right? They're fixed energy, stable, secure, but fixed, which means likely stagnant or possibly rigid. And what we're being asked to do is to activate out of that stagnancy. It's future thinking versus present safety. So lots of differences, right? So Mercury thinks fast in Aquarius, and that could be a good thing. He sees patterns and he questions authority, and he values objectivity, the stepping back and taking a deeper look or a bigger, wider lens to what's happening, and prioritizes the collective future. And then he wants breakthroughs, solutions, truth, progress. He wants that forward momentum. So Mercury in Aquarius wants answers yesterday, and he's in the final couple of degrees of Aquarius when he squares, because the very next day he moves into Pisces. So he's finishing something up here, right? So in that square, there's something vital that is really being squared with or activated, so that when Mercury moves into Pisces and it becomes more imaginative, peaceful, spiritual, it takes on a different energy, takes on a different life. And then remember, Uranus and Taurus is disrupting comfort, destabilizing the comfort zone. It is disrupting false security and awakening us, awakening our values within us and our movement toward really living those values out loud. Shakes the body and the nervous system too, and also demands authenticity in the material world, in the way that you work. So the square itself may feel like we're activated, like it's frustrating, maybe even. It can show up as, a new opportunity to really be yourself, a sudden aha that was like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to be real. Shocking news. I would expect the news cycle sometime this week, we might find that we are shocked by something. Mental overload. This will be a good week, I think, for us to get into our bodies, to get out into the physical world, to put your feet out there in the grass, on the ground, to do things that ground you. I would expect anxiety maybe spikes for those people who are anxious, but maybe not even have a telltale sign as to where that anxiety is coming from. Maybe speaking impulsively, but also that nervous system activation where you're running hot, which might mean that you become more tired, right, easily through the day. This, we're still not in a decide now time. We're still in this integration of the dream with the real world. We're in an interface moment. So pause before reacting. Try not to get into that reactive mode. Don't fire off that email that chastises someone or blows someone's, up, blows up your relationship with someone. Don't assume that your first insight is the final truth, because there could be more to that story that unfolds over time. Let the emotional waves settle before you speak or before you send off that email, right? And you settle the emotional wave by waiting. Waiting is what you do. And that's especially important because you want your true voice. You don't want to water it down, but you don't want to be emotionally reactive where you end up polarized or divisive or hurting someone else's emotions or feelings. Not that you're responsible for other people's feelings. You're only really responsible for your own. But you can put things in a way that are uplifting and not destabilizing or demoralizing. And not every truth needs to be spoken immediately, right? You can hold back, but every truth does deserve to be honored, and honored internally. And then when the timing is right, spoken. Okay. All right. So some practical grounding things. Step away from your screens, your phones, your televisions for a while. If anxiety is spiking because of the news, turn it off. Go somewhere else. And ground into the body. Walk, Stretch, breathe, do some exercising, write your insights down instead of acting on them. Write them down. Get your journal out. Wait 24 hours before making big decisions, perhaps this week. Give yourself some time. I also want to remind everybody that next week, Mercury moves into the shadow of his next retrograde, which also begins in February. So be aware, right, that things are slowing down a little bit before we get to the next peak. All right. So this week isn't really about certainty at all. This week is going to be about the awareness of how things connect, about your authentic self, right? And that let the insights arrive. Let them come in, let them land. Let the feeling of what it is that you're seeing, feeling, catch up to what's real and what it is that you need to do to take action. All right. All right. Questions. I've been on mental overload, Patty says, with the election. All of this is very electric, right? There's a lot of electricity running through the system right now. This is why a lot of other astrologers, they're thinking like this is the catalyst energy, February and March. I hear it a lot with different astrologers that something's going kaboom between now and next month meaning March. And I'm not sure that I agree with it being, I don't know, explosive, but I do believe there are some key things that are going to come into our awareness. Your role is to stay clear on what it is that you want, who you want to be, how you want to show up, and live from that while living your values as well. I know it's not easy, but it's what we're here to do. We came here at this time, right? We came here to be here right now. All right. Retrogrades, you're to blame, right? We try to blame the retrogrades, but the retrogrades just cause us to go internal, to look inward. All right, you guys. Let's see. Do I want to pull a card? I'm going to see if I can reach a deck. Yeah, let's do a Starseed Oracle. And I know we're after 9, but it's okay. The Starseed Oracle is written by Rebecca Campbell, and it's a very beautiful deck and very much in keeping with sort of the galactic nature of who we are, the angelic nature maybe even of who we are. And we have Star Ancestors, and it's about hidden secrets, lost wisdom, and looking a little deeper. Sorry, my light is bright and these cards are kind of pastelish colors, but that's what it looks like. The pyramid is the key. Let's see. This is Star Ancestors. So we're going back here. Okay. So the ancients knew much more than we do about our connection with the stars. Their pyramids, temples, and other places of worship created in precise alignment with the stars exist in all corners of the world. What if this ancient wisdom is available for you to uncover now? You're being called to think and listen with your ancient heart and soul, to tap into that part of you that remembers and knows. All ancient secrets are whispered forever in your ears. All mystic knowing blooms in your heart. All potent power pumps through your veins. You're being invited to step into your ancient knowingness, to be held by the rememberings of the star ancestors, to look a little deeper. If you're feeling stuck, you're being called to do something different, to change your point of view. Creativity happens when we put together two things that don't belong. Two great tastes that taste great together, right? Peanut butter and chocolate. When we do the unexpected. So often a creative solution is right in front of us, but because we think the same thoughts and act the same way, we miss what's in the open. You're here to remember and uncover ancient secrets and transmissions, technology and wisdom that are so needed on the planet right now. To unlock your soul's memories of a time when we lived in harmony on Earth and one day will again. So the Starseed activation says, I'm ready to remember ancient mysteries and secrets from deep within. So you know what this makes me think of? Disclosure, right? I don't know if you guys seen the movie, The Age of Disclosure, which is all about the different ways in which the government knows way more than they will let on about UFOs, or UAPs as they're termed now. So what if the ancient nature of our human souls is revealed? Who knows? All right, you guys, that's it for me. I will see you on Friday. Have a great week, and thank you for being here today. Bye for now.